Okay, so you have the default profile here. So if I want to create this, okay, so let's copy you. We'll throw you inside of here. So I'm in my home directory. Let's create a profile. So we'll touch. What are we gonna call this? It's Docker. Oh, we'll call this no Maker profile. Do I have VI? I do have VI. Do I have Vim? I do have Vim. Okay, so if we keep everything the same here, and the only thing we change is the maker. Okay, nothing left for that. So now I want to do a Docker run IT. We'll go ahead and remove this afterwards. We'll volume mount this to, we can volume mount to dot. And let's do to data. We'll run Ubuntu latest. So I guess first we'll run this normally. Oh, I have to do sudo. You're not paying a single penny for your college education at the moment, living off of scholarships. And education in India is really cheap compared to the US. Yeah, that's very true. And that's awesome. I'm glad you're able to go to college without any with all the scholarships. That's really good. Nice. That's excellent. Okay. Here we are. We're now inside of the Docker container, and I want to we're going to go to /data, and we can now see all of this stuff here. So first off, maker test, and obviously test is now there. Not really all that shocking, right? Now, if I create a new pane, so pane new, I have to SSH in again. I'm going to go into secure Docker, and we're going to run. Oh, it doesn't have this command. So we're going to do sudo docker run IT volume mount to data as well. But before we hit return, we're also going to run the security opt security comp equals to no maker profile.json, and then the rest of it. Okay. So if I do that, Now, can I make her another test? We cannot. Now, Mictor's in here. Which is in the same list as clock adjust time, which tells me that this table is wrong. Docker's default security profile is an allow list, which specifies the calls that are allowed. The table below lists the significant but not all syscalls that are effectively blocked because they are not on the allow list. The table includes the reason each syscall is blocked rather than whitelisted. But this is in the allow list. Is there like an issues on this? It depends on the service, right? Like some repositories or organizations have a system where they'll pay you for any vulnerabilities that you find, and some don't. Like for example, Apple is famous for never having a security bounty system in place. And they don't seem to ever, like, they're never going to do it. So why do I see that? Okay, that phrase is not found in here. Why when I look for it, it shows in here? That, okay. Let's see if it's part of the closed ones. Here is the pull. Here's the issue, and they pull requested to whitelist clock adjust time. So the question is, where's the website hosted? Is there like a place that we can find to like tell them, hey, this is bad? Like, so they forgot to update the documentation. That's really what it was. They whitelisted it because they needed to be able to do clock adjust time, but they forgot to remove it from this documentation here, which is perfectly normal, perfectly understandable that would happen. You want to get into bug bounties, you're always keen in getting into red teaming, pen testing. I've never done security stuff myself. I've worked with teams that do it, and I've worked with a security team that was really awesome, but I've never myself done any kind of like security type stuff. And like there was one time I thought I found like a pretty big vulnerability. We did it on stream, and so I put a bug in for, it was GitHub themselves, and they told me like, nope, thanks for looking into it. However, it's not a vulnerability. Like, the token that you found is like purposely bad, but we just left the token in there even after it's bad. And it's like, okay, cool, but also, alarming. So I have never really found like a real problem. This one isn't a problem. It's just a documentation error. Now it'd be nice if there was like maybe how to update the document, like how to help them update the documentation. Now there's guides to third parties documentation, but I don't think this is, yeah, so this is just a style guide. Oh, contributing to Docker docs. There was this one bug in Git where we can alter the ID of the person who commits to the remote Git repo. Wasn't that like a feature of Git, like just the way they wrote it? Because I remember there was a lot of time where people were just committing as whoever they wanted to. Okay, so they have a contributing guide here. Okay, and that's over here in Docker Docs. So in issues here, I want to see if this is found. Did somebody open an issue about this here? Oh, there's one closed. Ooh, right here. The syscalls that are blocked and significant syscalls blocked by the default profile are outdated as related to the default reference provided just above the table here. The recommendation is to update the table to reflect the actual syscalls that are blocked. Oh, are there specific syscalls you were looking at? Note that blah, 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 profiles, default JSON is the master branch. The current 2010X release of the engine will use the profile from, okay, in there, which may default. Thanks. For example, clock adjust time is called as blocked by default profile. It is allowed in default profile. Okay, so they decided it's a good idea to do. So okay, so somebody decided to put a PR in there. And then they just close it. Closing as stale. This is mostly up to date now with limited exceptions, including the original problem that the person opened it for. Why would they do this? Okay. I mean, to be honest, that sort of like response and going through it and then just closing it with like it's mostly up to date is just really lazy to me, and also doesn't make me really want to like spend the time to try to fix it for them, because this is probably what's going to happen to me. I read this in an article. They paid the guy 10,000 USD for resolving it. Oh yeah, there are a lot of bug bounties out there that can pay a lot of money. I remember there was a pretty big deal this was many years ago. Somebody managed to get access to the AWS S3 buckets for Instagram. And this was shortly after Instagram had been purchased by Facebook. And they were perusing through them and they found some keys. As they tested the keys, and the keys were active and live and root level keys. They had root level access to like the database for all of Facebook, including they found keys for like the backups and other things. And in the article that they were talking about is like they could have, if somebody had gotten access to these keys, deleted all of Facebook and all of Instagram and all of like the other two applications that they had at that time. They just had access to everything. And they could have deleted all their backups too, so that there would be no chance of recovery. They could have destroyed Facebook right like at the, right when it was starting to get really popular. And of course they put it into their bug bounty program, and I think they got paid like $50,000 or something like that, which the community was very unhappy at the time because they felt that it was worth like maybe like $1 million or more for that problem, because that was the company is just dead. Like Facebook could have been just gone, wiped off the face of the planet. So yeah, I do feel like sometimes like there's the money is like worth it, and sometimes it's like they don't pay you enough for it. You have deleted. Well, here's the thing: is like this is before Facebook Shorts. This is before like they were doing like big advertisement type stuff. It was nowhere near the behemoth that we have now. I think at the time, Google Plus was still active and trying to like take Facebook's like some of their users. So a super fun and interesting look look into like how sometimes you get paid really well, and then sometimes the work you do, or like I guess it wasn't that much work to find the problem. It was more of the cost of like what it could have been if he had just sold it to an actual hacker, like a black hat hacker, would have been like he probably could have gotten multi-millions of dollars from that. Oh yeah, the good old days of Google Plus. Before that was at the beginning when people didn't know that they were gonna shut off so many services. Okay, so I'm just not gonna worry about helping them update their docs. There's no reason if they're just gonna close it without actually having done the change that was in the issue to fix. Like that seems silly. That's generally terrifying though, losing all that hard work. Yes. And it's one of the reasons why they recommend you make sure that you keep backups in multiple systems, including offline backups. And if you're a company, that should be a no-brainer. And there's plenty of options to do this. Generally these days you could do multi-cloud backups where you have backup stored on AWS and Azure. And then don't store the keys all in one place. Like generally don't store the keys in buckets. But if you have to, make sure the buckets are locked down. Okay, so we'll have to talk about this, but this is great. We can now look at this list. Not this list. This list. We can look at this list and see these are all the commands that you can do that affects the actual system. Perfect. And this starts now. Well, there's not like a latest, is there? I guess it's 25. What's Docker Engine right now? Is there like a Docker Engine? Okay, 2503. So 25.0, and then this would be the allow list that it has. Okay, so we can take you. Okay, so Docker has a default profile that limits the capabilities that the container can do to the host system. The list we link to is an allow list. Okay, so the list we link to is an allow list, meaning that if the container, if the profile Do I know any good image processing models that I can use for grayscaling? I don't think so. I'm not really like a big image processing person, and so I don't really know anything about it. Usually, whenever I need to do something, I just like install GIMP and then just manually do it, and then I just don't know what I'm doing with it too. I just lots of googling and figuring things out. And sometimes it works. You tried this out 7 to 8, none of them worked. Oh, that's too bad. Yeah, unfortunately, because I don't know anything about it, I would also not be able to help. Maybe there's a community of people who does image modeling or processing or something like that, and they would have more information. But I don't even know where to go to find such a community. Okay, so first we'll run the okay, so let's play around with this. First we'll run the we'll run a container. Let's see, with the default profile. Okay, so first we'll run a container with the default profile and create a directory on the host system. Which is going to be this. Like we already did this one here. So it's a sudo docker run it rm v, okay, data ubuntu latest. I put in my password. I'm able to find that. It brings in. I then make dir test, and then we can see the test. Let's create a new profile for that. Let's create a new profile and remove the make dir command. Make dir command. Since we have Docker Engine version 2503, I don't think I need anything like that. I think like there you go. So like that's kind of it. All right, so that's remove the kernel capabilities. I guess like remove, instead of kernel capabilities, just remove capabilities from the root Docker container user. Excellent. That's good. This is related to the project you were talking about, using image processing to read number plates to auto-register vehicle, update vehicle data in parking lots. Oh, you need to image processing for something like that. Interesting. Yeah, I've never done much with images. So unfortunately, as I mentioned, I can't really help out with that. So it's more of like a good luck. Hopefully you're able to get it. Okay, so next one would be set the root container user to map to a non-root host user. Okay, so that will be, this is now what we want to figure out. Okay, user namespaces. So this is part of user namespaces. Refer to the daemon commands. And then there was, okay, so, oh, the daemon command. And then I bet there's a namespace for this in here. Let's see. Hussein, hello. How are you doing today? You started removing all capabilities in Kubernetes, similar idea to what you're doing in Docker now, and also running the container as non-root, which is nice. But I wonder if doing both is unnecessary. I mean, it's always a little bit hard to tell, isn't it, right? Because as long as we're not hacked or bad things don't happen, it is one of those things where it's like, was it really necessary for us to do that? And obviously, if something bad does happen, then we know we didn't do enough. But also, we don't want something bad to happen to prove that to ourselves. So, do we want to overdo it? Maybe. But yeah, it's the reason why it's so hard to define the. It's the reason why it's so hard to define how much value you're getting out of like a sysadmin team. Because systems administrators and a security team also, like I would sort of put them both into the same group for this specific item, right? A security admin, a sysadmin, both of them are supposed to be making things work for you and making sure that like you have access to what you want when you want it. And obviously being hacked means you lose access to it. That kind of sucks and is not good. But if things work just fine, is it because your admin team, your security team are doing a good job? Or is it because it wasn't necessary to begin with? Or they went too far? It's so hard to tell. Being a sysadmin in a past life, I would argue for going overboard is better than not going overboard, but who might argue? it's a business decision. If a business owner wants to skimp on security and run, yes, they run that risk, but at the same time, if nothing happens for many, 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 many years, and then they have to fix it all, if that cost is less than paying somebody every year for, keeping the hack from happening to begin with, unfortunately, we all know what's going to happen. They just won't be secure because it's cheaper to not be. It's funny, right? Like, it sucks. Okay. I'm thinking that is this thing here. Here's my guess. The blog post is going to tell us that we use this user group setting for user namespaces. Are you going to have a section in here for that too? I think it actually said we can go to the namespace section in here, didn't it? Daemon user namespace options. The Linux kernel user namespace support provides additional security by enabling a process and therefore a container to have a unique range of user and group IDs which are outside the traditional user and group range utilized by the host system. One of the most important security improvements is that, by default, container processes running as the root user have expected administrative privileges it expects, with some restrictions inside the container, but are effectively mapped to an unprivileged UID on the host. Okay. So that brings me to here. Isolate containers with a user namespace. Linux namespaces provide isolation for running processes, limiting their access to system resources without the running processes being aware of the limitations. Okay, that sounds appropriate. The best way to prevent privilege escalation attacks from within a container is to configure your container's applications to run as unprivileged users. For containers whose processes must run as the root user within a container, you can remap this user to a less privileged user on the Docker host. The mapped user is assigned a range of UIDs which function within the namespace as normal UIDs from 0, okay, blah, 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 but have no privileges on the host machine itself. Okay, that's kind of what we want. The remapping itself is handled by two files, etc subuid and sub. So subuid and subgid. Okay, do those files exist right now? Yes, they do. What is those? There's also these files with a dash in them. Oh, which are empty. But these have 26 things in them. What is in there? Okay, so secure Docker is 100,000 to 65,536. And then this is an empty file. Okay, so yeah, this is an empty file. Can I see what user ID that is? What is the way for us to see what our user ID is? Well, we can look in the etc password file. So if I cat passivity pipe to grep, let's look for this one. Don't find it. Okay. How about this one? Don't find it. Okay, then I don't know what that is. This means that test user is assigned a subordinate user ID range. Oh, it's a range of 231072 and the next 65 integers in sequence. The ID is mapped with the namespace. Is that okay? If a process attempts to escalate privilege outside of the namespace, the process is running as an unprivileged high number UID on the host, which is not even mapped to a real user. This means the process has no privileges on the host system at all. Wait a second. So does that mean when you configure Docker to use the RNS remap feature, you can optionally specify an existing user and or group? If you specify default user group, doc remap is created and used for this purpose. This is already set up for us by default in Ubuntu. This is great. This is exactly what we were hoping for. Is like there's nothing we need to do if you're on Ubuntu, but it specifically calls out here that if you're on a Red Hat, or if you're on Red Hat Enterprise Linux or CentOS, then you're going to have to do this yourself. Also, just out of curiosity, because it's been a while since I did anything with sudo. Now that puts me as root here. So when I run sudo, it says secure Docker. That's something I'm a little bit concerned about. When I run sudo docker run, it creates a container but I'm running as root, meaning that, does this mean that I'm only protected if I add myself to the Docker group? If you want to use the Docker remap user automatically created by Docker, check for the Docker remap entry in these files after configuring and restarting Docker. There's no Docker remap entry, right? Yeah, there was no Docker remap entry. There's just this. Unless that's what they're talking about and it's not like labeled. You can start Dockerd with the users remap flag, or follow this procedure to configure the daemon using daemon.json configuration file. Okay, so daemon.json is recommended. And this is etc docker. Okay, so we want to go take a look at this. There's nothing in there. Okay, assuming the file is previously empty, the following entry enables user ns. Okay, so username, user namespace, remap, user using user and group called test user. So there is something in there for our test user. So we want to add this in. But I forgot how to go to the end of the line. Oh, and I'm so used to Helix now movements. Okay, so what is it? Secure Docker? Now, so if I do that, oh, it's not writable. Okay, fine. I don't think I can force it now. There was like a write force like that, but I don't think I could do it. So I have to. Oh, and this file, okay, this file doesn't exist. Yeah, so secure Docker. Okay. And then secure Docker, that maps through. We have to restart the Docker daemon, and I think we have this set up to launch on reboot. I think that's already set up for us. So I'm just going to go ahead and reboot. And an ad is starting in around 20 seconds or so. So I think I'm going to let that finish rebooting. I'm going to go use the restroom really quickly. And I will be right back. So quick break, 3-minute break. All right, we still have a minute left on the ads. So I guess we'll, I need to clean up these wires too. But I suppose we can continue on while waiting for Twitch to come back. All right, so what was I going to do? I was going to okay, so we want to connect back in again. And let's connect over here again too. And let's go ahead and see, is Docker still running? It is. I'm also surprised that sudo didn't ask me for my password. Does it not like immediately after I log in? Like, is there like a 5-second or 10-second or whatever timeout? I know that there's usually some kind of timeout for that, but I don't remember what it is by default. But okay, so Docker's still running. Docker is running now. Now, how do I verify that this is working? Okay, save the file and restart Docker. If you're using the Docker remap user, verify that Docker created it using the id command. Ooh, okay, so I can use id doc remap. Oh, id. Well, that, okay, wait a second. What? Oh, to have the doc remap user and have Docker create it for you, set the value to default rather than test user. Oh, that's what I want to do. I want to set this to default. Oh, okay. So do you not remember what this is? It's Vim. Was it over here? Yeah, but secure Docker is actually my user. So I think this was a bad idea because if I do secure Docker, that's my user, which I realize now is actually not helpful. Is that true? Like, okay, so here's the groups, but I have sudo access, which like, okay, so I'm giving Docker sudo access. Well, I guess it's root, so that's not really all that different than what it has right now. Verify that the entry has been added to Etsy SUBUID. Okay. Oh, here's how we can verify it. Okay. Verify that a namespace directory exists within var lib docker named with the GUI, UID and GID of the namespace user, owned by that UID and GID, and not group or world readable. Some of the subdirectories are still owned by root and have different permissions. Okay, so this is in var lib docker, and we have run some stuff previously, so we should be able to see them, right? So if I go to var lib docker, these are all owned by root, except for that one. That's interesting. And what am I looking for? Verify that previous images are not available using a Docker image ls command. Oh, okay. This is really cool. Without adding myself to the Docker group. Yeah, without adding myself to the Docker group, I can now run Docker without sudo because Docker is running as my user, as me. So this is an alternative to allow us to run Docker without our user. This is cool. I like this. Okay, so I am still back and forth on whether or not it's a better idea to like make it be a completely separate user. But if it breaks out, it should turn into a user that doesn't actually exist because its ID and everything else will be something different. But now if I come over here and we go to containers. No, those are still owned by root. Which containers are supposed to be owned by that GUID on UID?